Hey, how you doing there again, folks? Me again, of course. Brandon Wenzel, come back at you with another confession off my concert confession series. Yes, indeed, folks. Concert confession series is a vlog series I've been doing for a little while now. I go over there, I talk about concerts and other live events that I've attended recently, and just kind of blather on about it for a bit. It's an opportunity for me to go over there and confess my concert sins, to recount my recreational revelries, to muse over my musical misadventures. Basically, it's just an opportunity for me to go over there and stand on a big old soapbox and say, look at these cool things I did. But we'll get to that. Folks, it is a super simple format. I'm just going to go over there and blather on for typically about 20 minutes or so. Whilst I'm doing all that, I'm in my back room today, which means we get Beer Can Thunderbolt poster. Ooh, Beer Can Thunderbolt poster. Whilst I'm doing all that, folks, I am doing something else. What is it? I'm wearing a super cool shirt. Folks, when I wear super cool shirts, I always like to highlight the super cool shirt. What super cool shirt am I wearing for you today? Happens to be my snot shirt. Yeah, buddy. Excuse me, which is actually doubly prevalent with this particular, not this particular review, but in this particular format, because first and foremost, the last episode that I did was me going over there and recounting my experience at getting to see Snot live, which was very cool. And on top of that, when I did my last episode of Concert Confessions, I went over there and wanted to showcase the shirt, but I forgot to bring it with me when I did the review, so I didn't ever actually get to show it off. So here it is. It's Snot shirt. Yeah, it's very cool and fancy. Snot, by the way, are an awesome freaking band who've been going for, decades now. If you want to go over there and check out, what they're all about, at least in a live setting, I actually did get some videos from their performance that I attended. Those videos are on my channel as well. But anyway, what are we doing here today, folks? What's going on? Well, this is, as I stated, my Concert Confession series. This is episode number 22. Concert number 195, folks. I'm so close to 200. I can taste it. But what concert was it? Specifically, this was me going out to get to see Megaran again, this time at the National Public Housing Museum in Chicago, Illinois. I didn't know that was a thing, but it is, and so it was. And actually, this show, in general, was a bit of kind of a pop-up thing. I always try to keep my, general eye on Megaran and his comings and goings, but this wasn't like part of a tour or anything like that. It was just, kind of a one-off event. And originally, I didn't know if I was going to be able to attend because I actually had a show already scheduled for today. But as it turned out, this was earlier in the afternoon, so it's something I can make happen. So I got to do 2 shows. So yeah, there's going to be another episode coming pretty soon. But when I do this show, I like to go in a little bit of a format that I've got. The first thing that I always like to talk about is the venue. In this instance, like I said, it was the National Public Housing Museum, which, again, never heard of before. But no, it actually was a really cool space. And true to its namesake, it's a little museum. It's like a 3-story, well, I guess 4, because there's a basement, building that goes over there and talks about the history of public housing in America. Some of it focuses more specifically on, Chicago and everything like that. Of course, famously, you had the Cabrini Green area, which is actually where they took the, if you've ever seen the original Candyman, the 1990s one, took place in that particular area. So they talk about that stuff and, really just kind of like the whole sort of public housing thing and, where it came from, where it's been. It was really neat, and something that, as somebody who loves history, was really cool for me to see. I actually haven't been to a museum since I was like a little kid, back when I actually lived in Chicago. We used to go out to museums for, field trips and stuff like that. So it was really cool. It actually was free to get in. They even provided food. Granted, it was vegan food, but to that end, I actually thought the vegan stuff was good. I had a vegan chicken sandwich and some vegan mac and cheese. Even had some probiotic soda, which was cool. I actually really enjoyed the spread. And yeah, I mean, just in general, it had a really cool layout. And I was actually surprised, like the area where they had like the stage and stuff set up was not exactly the most optimal for, a live event, but like for the amount of people that were there and, they actually got really good sound out of it and stuff. Uh, Honestly, it was a really cool spot. Maybe not like a venue in the most classical sense of things, but a genuinely cool area. You could kind of come and go as you pleased. Um, really nice, like I said, man, I keep saying, really nice spot. Definitely a place that I'd like to go over there and check out again. Uh, just even outside of a concert setting. Like, I really enjoyed it. I spent some time before and after Mega Ran set, kind of, perusing around and, seeing what the whole thing was about, and I learned some interesting stuff. So the next thing I talk about after I talk about the venue is I talk about the bands. In this case, band, but not band artist. That being specifically Mega Ran. So I have talked about Mega Ran in one of my other concert confession series that I did earlier this year because this is my second time seeing him live this year. I have seen Mega Ran a whole bunch of times. First time I saw Mega Ran was at a little comic book, or well, sort of comic anime-ish convention that's not even around anymore, sadly. And that was, back in like my mid-20s, so over a decade ago. I have nothing but the greatest regard and respect for Mega Ran. Not only as just a performer, but honestly, even as an individual. I mean, I know you're not supposed to, idolize celebrities and stuff like that. But as somebody who's gone over there and, not only followed his career, but, I've listened to podcasts about his history and, like, the guy's a genuinely inspirational story, coming up from, kind of a hard living situation, eventually becoming a teacher, going over there, taking that experience into his eventual rap and hip hop career. Although actually he did that before he became a teacher, and then he started it back up again. I love what he does, and what he does best, in my opinion, is just making people incredibly happy with his live performances, and that was certainly the case today. You know, Normally his set tends to focus more on his sort of nerdcore aspect of his music. That's kind of what he's known for. And if you're unfamiliar with nerdcore, by the way, it is a sort of a subgenre within hip hop and rap that tends to focus more on nerdy stuff. In the case with Mega Ran, as his namesake might suggest to you, he tends to focus on, a lot of times video game stuff. But he's also done stuff for wrestling and sports, and he's been on video game soundtracks. He was on the soundtrack for Clerks 3. The guy's been tremendously successful. In this instance, although he did do a little video game stuff, he was mostly focusing on kind of the sort of the, what's the word I'm looking for here? Well, he recently went over there and released a children's album, so he was focusing more on that, which was perfectly cool because actually it's a really good album. It's one of those things, even if you're not a kid, you can still enjoy it. But it's especially cool, if you have kids or something like that. It's a great album. You can go over there and share with them. For the setting that we were in, it was perfect because, well, there were a lot of kids. It was an open house kind of event thing. They had a scavenger hunt going on. It was a whole thing. Anyway, getting back to Mega Ran. No, I really enjoyed his set. I always enjoy Mega Ran's set, but some have been better than others. That's just bound to happen as, you see more and more of them. This was a really solid one. I missed some of the more, video game and nerdcore mainstays, but I understood why, obviously, again, they wouldn't be as prominent in this particular instance. But again, we did get a few sort of more video game specific stuff in there. And even, again, like the children's stuff that he's been doing is really cool. And it was just a really good time. And like I said, they actually got really good sound out of. They had a limited stage space and everything, but for what they did, they really made it work incredibly well, in my opinion. And again, they got really nice sound quality out of it. Like, at the end of the day, look, I've been to shows in basements, I've been to shows in a tattoo parlor. If you can get the sound right, I don't give a damn. And they got the sound right. It sounded really good. Megaran tore the place up. And he did, it can be, I would imagine, I obviously don't perform on stage. I would imagine it could be potentially very daunting as a performer to perform in a setting that's not a conventional concert setting. Now, Megaran has done this for years, not only, not only at other sort of events and stuff, but, he does a lot of, like conventions and stuff, like I was saying earlier. In fact, the last time I saw him was performing at a convention. A convention isn't a conventional concert setting. But, especially in a setting like this, where you had a lot of little kids and stuff like that, I would imagine that could be hard to, invest the same way. You have to sort of find a different flow. But for Megaran, who, if you've ever seen any of his shows, like the guy is an absolute master of adaptation. And really, his set and stuff like that doesn't even really require much adapting. Excuse me. And it didn't in this instance. Like I said, a lot of the songs were already focused on, things that the kids could relate to. He had a lot of great crowd participation moments where he was able to go over there and really kind of bring people in. And everybody responded really well. It was really cool. I loved it, man. I had just an absolute blast. And to make it even better, because although Megaran was really the only featured performer, we did actually get kind of a cool little sort of cameo moment, if you will, from the Microphone Misfitz, who are a local rap and hip hop group and breakdancing group, actually, who I've been familiar with for not as long as Megaran, but several years now, and I actually ran into them at a Megaran show years ago. They have toured with him, they've collaborated on music with him, and typically if Megaran is performing in Illinois, the Microphone Misfits are going to be there in some capacity, usually to go over there and pop up on stage and, do a couple songs with him. And that's exactly what we got in this instance. He went over there and did a couple songs with them. The River City Girls song and Keep Watching, which are both awesome songs. I have videos of both of those songs on my channel. In case you want to check them out. And to that end, I want to definitely give out a huge shout out to the Microphone Misfits. They are incredibly awesome people. As much as I love Megaran and everything that he does, as much as I've been a big fan of his, the Misfits are like, it's so cool that they're like a Chicago/Illinois institution, something that we can claim locally. And, I love what they do. Like, they're one of those groups where it's like, yeah, I do know them mostly because of their association with Megaran, but well and truly beyond that, I love what they do. They have such a cool creative flair to what they do. They have comic books that accompany their CDs. Like I said, they incorporate breakdancing as part of their, stage performances. And even beyond that, like, just the message that they send out and the individuals that they're all really good dudes, I've been really fortunate to go over there and meet them on any number of occasions, chat with them, and, like, I've nothing but great things to say about those guys. Getting to see them up on stage with Megaran, I've seen it before. Hopefully I'll see it again. I never get tired of it. Both Megaran and the Microphone Misfits absolutely knocked it out of the park in their segments together. And overall, it was a blast, man. It's Megaran. I'm never not going to be happy at a Megaran show. In fact, I probably smile most, possibly in my entire life, when I'm at a Megaran show. But anyway, let's talk about the crowd real quick. So as I mentioned, the crowd was an interesting crowd because you had a lot of little kids and, again, it was sort of a museum event and, it was kind of like, are they there for the raffle? Are they there for the museum? Are they there for the scavenger hunt? here's the thing. Everybody, when Mega Ran started performing, was there for Mega Ran. Everybody, because they started things off with a raffle, so, hey, everybody's, raffle. Nobody left. Everybody hung out there. Again, you had the microphone Misfitz in attendance. You also had, like, some other sort of, associated people. One thing that was really cool was that Mega Ran's wife and actually his son were there. And I'd met his wife on a number of occasions. She's very lovely. But this is actually my first time meeting his son, which was really cool. He was, rambunctious kid and stuff. So that was a really cool added benefit. It was nice to, I know that's something, that's what prompted him to start doing the kids' albums that he's done. And, it's easy to see why, because he has a beautiful family, and that's certainly inspirational. But the crowd, again, like, despite being a non-traditional concert crowd, were very responsive to everything going on, They participated. We had some two-step movements going on. I was whiffing hard on that because I'm this guy, but, I was doing my best. But again, you had the Misfits there to kind of help make up for my lack of rhythm. It was genuinely awesome, man. And like, in getting to see, yeah, a lot of the little kids were only kind of like half interested because they're little kids. But like, there were genuinely some that were totally into it. And, you could tell their attention was fixed. Everybody, like I said, really seemed to enjoy it. And it was really great to see. I very much think that Ran and, the Misfits made some more fans in that setting. So I thought the crowd was great. Merch. Let's talk about merch. I don't really have a lot in the way of merch. I wanted to buy some merch from Mega Ran, as I like to do. But he didn't have any shirts available in my size. Boo. But to be fair, I understand he wasn't doing like a full tour. It was just a one-off show. Double X. Just saying. But no, so I didn't end up buying anything, but I did get a couple things. Specifically, these are basically souvenirs, let's call them that. I got the program for, the whole thing. So, the whole thing was called Ground Waves Generations, hosted by Mers, who, by the way, was awesome. He was a great host. And then, of course, Mega Ran, which was very cool. And yeah, it's just a program. Just is what it is. And the other thing that I got, when I went over there to register, well, I was already registered, but when I went to check in, I got a poster. Well, sort of a poster. So we got the whole thing, which this actually is very cool for me, because, like, I like to collect these things from shows that I go to. At some point, I want to go over there and, like, just completely do up, like a room in my house, basically almost like a concert venue. So very cool for me. And that's it. Like I said, I would have loved to have gotten some proper merch, but limited options available. But let's talk about pros and cons. Give it a final grade. Pros: Mega Ran, the microphone Misfits, the National Public Housing Museum. The wonderful crowd, again, featuring Mega Ran's beautiful family. Hell, even the food, like I said, was pretty dang good for what it was. Honestly, like, the whole thing was really a pro. I don't think I had a single bad thing to say about it. I guess, and I wouldn't even consider it a con. I guess just because it was a somewhat, again, less conventional concert venue, but again, that's really not much of a con because it was such a cool spot and it allowed such a cool assortment of people. Cons. I would have liked Mega Ran's set to be longer. That's the only con that I really have, because he didn't really know how long they wanted him to go. I guess they didn't give him like a real specific time set. So he basically just, clocked it out. And I think he did basically like a half-hour set or so. I wish we would have gotten more. That's my only lament, I would say, the only con. Because everything else was just really cool, man. It was just really good people in a really cool setting and a really great way to spend an afternoon, man. Like, The show started at like probably around like 3:30 or so, something like that, you know. I was out of there by like 5:30, you know, and that was again after perusing around and stuff like that and checking out the museum. My overall grade for this particular show, I would have to say, is an A. You know, like if again, if I could make any critiques, I would have liked Mega Ran set to be longer, or barring that, would have been cool. Like you know, if we could have gotten like a full microphone Misfit set to kind of you know. But again, I understand there's time constraints and they were doing other stuff and everything. Um, and it was just a pop up, you know, one off event. But yeah, in the future, if they were to do something like this again, I would love to see them do, you know, either have maybe multiple acts throughout the course of the day, or if you have like a featured, you know, event like Mega Ran, like I said, just go over there and you know let it run a little bit longer. So, but yeah, I'm gonna call this one an A. Just really good people. It was such a positive vibe, and like I said, man, I was smiling the whole time, you know. And I love Mega Ran. I love the Misfits. I love just the whole thing. It was just such a great vibe. So I don't have a good outro for this particular show that I do. So, folks, please go over there and support live music. It's so important. When you get out there, when you can, please buy merch. You know, that helps out tremendously. It's a billion times better than going over there and Spotify or fucking. That does nothing. Okay? Nothing at all. Go out and support your favorite artists. You know, it costs a little bit more, but it's worth it. And, you know, you get some merch and stuff like that. And you get to look cool like me. Bye.